Was there like a moment where you were like, okay, shit's getting real?
I'd say so. So for me, that kind of moment of reality check was when I was asked if I could set up the New York studio. The exciting thing for me is that we can work with the Amazons of the world today, but we can also work with the small players at the same time.
Taking it, but you have the longest case
Ever.
known to man.
Yeah, so you have been like a part of a very interesting journey as well, right? Because there are not so many studios, I would say, that had this big transformation in this fairly short amount of time.
I mean, this is quite a random answer, but one of the things I do miss is printing out the work and putting it on the wall.
What do you think is the secret sauce there?
I think the secret sauce, yeah, as you said, it stems down to absolutely every.
What's good, everybody, and welcome to the Brand Review. Today we are joined by Luke Dodridge, design director from Koto in London. We've been talking about doing this for quite some time, so we're super excited to get him on. Koto, for those of you who do not know, is, I'd say, one of the hottest branding design studios and the most successful, founded in 2015, span across Australia, New York, Berlin, and also London. And they're doing some amazing stuff at the moment. They have some of the biggest clients in the world. And today we're going to be talking actually a lot about their philosophy on how they actually approach work and the relationship between the design philosophies of smaller clients all the way up to those bigger ones. And we're also going to be talking about the initiatives that Koto are doing as well with younger creatives, which is, I think, really exciting. And we're going to be looking into Luke's career as well, because he's been there pretty much since the beginning. So he's seen big things happen. So we're really, really excited to dive into his journey. So I think, without further ado, we should jump straight in. What do you reckon? Let's do this.
Thanks very much for having me. Super excited to be on, and good to chat to you again. It's been a little while since you were in Paradigms.
It has been a while. So we've got like a couple of topics that we're gonna cover. A little bit. Well, we're gonna obviously go into a little bit of Koto as well, but also first and foremost, we kind of want to know a little bit about your good self. Where you're from. I've already said who you are, but you could probably just tell us a little bit more about that and basically kind of your background and what you're doing at Koto.
And how did you get into design and branding as well? Also super interesting.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so I'm Luke, originally from Eastbourne, and I'm now a design director at Koto. And it's been a journey of about sort of 7-8 years now, me in the design industry. I studied graphic design all the way through college, always had a kind of big passion for it. And then, studied at a uni, Kingston. It was brilliant. Had a really kind of creative course that was quite ad heavy, I'd say. So it was all kind of focused on the idea is the kind of beginning point of every single brand, which is a really kind of good base to set me up. I then interned at loads of kind of bigger agencies. I did a sort of year out abroad where I studied in Oslo. And then I came back and went to Turner Duckworth, Midday Studio, quite packaging heavy places. Because at that moment in time, I had a real kind of passion for the physicality of products. So that was a path I kind of thought I was going to go down. And then I landed on my first studio, which was called Studio Thomas. And it was set up by two Toms and a coder called James.
Nice.
And it was super small. We were in a tiny little place in East London, and it was just awesome. And they gave me the opportunity to, really kind of find my feet in design. Especially when you're working with such a close-knit team. We were literally 4 of us in a room, and you can really kind of hone your craft. And they give you the time that you need, which was absolutely brilliant. And they kind of invested a lot of time in me. And then, time went on. They didn't really grow at the rate that I thought they were going to, or they thought they were going to. So I was kind of ready for a new opportunity because I wanted to, go to a slightly larger place. And luckily, I landed at Koto, which is where I've been for the past sort of 7 years now. I've been there for a long time, what it seems like. But I was there sort of when we were also quite a small studio, and it's now grown to a pretty mammoth one.
Mammoth is a good word.
Yeah.
Behemoth. You can also use as many giant words. Um, but yeah, I mean, when you actually went to Koto, were they looking for people, or did you basically, you met somebody in the pub, told you about the studio, and then you got chatting, or how did that kind of come about?
So it actually came from one of the Toms, who I
Oh,
was
really?
working with at
Okay.
the time. So I, in all honesty, hadn't really heard of Koto at the time because I don't think they were, well, they weren't as big and they weren't definitely as sort of outward facing or didn't have a really big presence. They weren't one of the key places that you're like, everyone knows about. So Tom was like, "Oh, do you know what? You should just apply to Koto." And I was like, "Okay, cool. That sounds awesome. Let me sort of reach out to someone there just on a whim." It was always one of those things where you're thinking, "Oh, there's no way they're going to even read this email. It's just going to go into the ether of someone's inbox." But luckily, yeah, all the kind of stars aligned, and I had an interview. And it all went really well. And I sort of started out as a freelance junior designer, actually. So I'd been in the industry for a year and a half, and they were like, "Well, let's just sort of test you out." And this is something that we've retained at Koto over the past, 7 years that I've been there. We always like to get people in on a sort of freelance basis first, and then move them into a full time role. And that was brilliant for me because you just so when I joined, there was probably about 14 of us, 15 of us in the room. But that was across all the different areas. There was people on finance, there was people in the design team, there was all the other kind of parts of the business. So on the design team itself, there was probably about six or seven. So it was very very small in comparison to where we are now. But it was awesome. There was like a couple of people at each level, so yeah, it was really kind of nice, and it meant that you had a nice kind of SWAT team on each kind of job. There'd be like obviously one creative director, one design director, a senior designer, and maybe a junior, and that would be the makeup of the team. Um,
Nice, nice.
yeah.
Remember we watched a YouTube video, remember, ages ago of Koto, and there was like I don't know if it was like felt like a documentary or something, or behind the scenes. And
Oh,
we came
okay.
into the studio, it was like, I don't know, maybe 10 years old. And I remember, because it kind of looked a bit similar to what we have here a bit. And I remember the view out of the window, there was a train going past. Is that the studio that you were in?
Oh, I think that would have been the one just before.
Okay.
Right, okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
it looked cool. It was very kind of reminiscent of like everyone kind of getting stuck in and doing lovely creative work.
Mm.
Yeah, no, 100%. We've moved around a fair bit actually over the course of my time there. So yeah, there's been some nice small ones, intimate ones, and then we've moved into slightly larger places as time's
Mm.
moved on.
Yeah, so you have been like a part of a very interesting journey as well, right? Because there are not so many studios, I would say, that like had this big transformation in this fairly short amount of time, right?
Mm.
I don't know, how was that? I mean, now you are like, I don't know how many people you are now.
So in London, there's probably about 50 to 60 of us in the room at any given time. But then
Wow, okay.
across the globe, we've kind of got that elsewhere as well. So we're kind of looking at about 200 people ish. So we've got
Okay.
LA, New York, London, Berlin, and most recently Australia. So they're all kind of at different sizes. London's remained the biggest all the time. We were the kind of first studio, and all the ones are sort of following. LA is getting pretty big at the same time as well. Likewise, New York following in scale.
So that kind of leads us on quite nicely to the next question, because on that journey that you've been on with them pretty much kind of from the beginning as it looks now, was there like a moment where you were like, okay, shit's getting real? Something, we either you won a client or suddenly things started to happen, the momentum picked up. Was there like a moment that you're like, okay,
I'd say so. So for me, that kind of moment of reality check was when I was asked if I could set up the New York studio with the creative director Arthur.
okay, all
So,
right, yeah.
I'd been kind of just doing the London life, and it had been awesome. And then Yeah, creative director Arthur, mate of mine, he said, "You want to come to New York and set up the studio with me? It's just going to be me and you and Chrissy, client director." And yeah, we're going to go over there, the three of us. And it was just such a momentous time. You know, we were all carrying all of their stuff that they were going to need because they were going to stay over there like forever.
Yeah,
And I was going over to sort of help out for an initial month, which was brilliant. And I was sort of moving his life there with him, which is quite like
wow.
a special moment for me. And then just being given that kind of, responsibility. You're just there with Arthur and it's kind of on you. You can't like fade into the background. You're going to be interviewing people. You're going to be searching for clients. We were doing an immersion actually at the time for Bolt, which just ended up being one of our, big kind of case study jobs, which looks brilliant. But yeah, for me, that was a really, really special time. And it was when, wow, this is actually like a big beast that's growing into something really, really special.
Do you also have the chance to like go to the other locations and like travel around?
Yeah, so it's something that Koto's always offered. We always give our team 10 days a year when they can work from another location. So that could be, you could go to the beach and work from the beach if you wanted to, or you could go and work from one of our other studios, which we really kind of encourage because it's just such a brilliant opportunity for everyone to meet the wider team. And because we're always chatting on Slack, all day long, cross country. And it's just brilliant way for everyone to get to know each other and get in all the banter and know who everyone is. So that's a brilliant thing. And yeah, we also offer, if someone wanted to exchange to another studio, we offer that as well. So there's a lot of people around the world, and LA studio was set up by primarily people that have come from the London office. Likewise, New York, there's been loads of people that have worked in the London studio who now just move their lives over there. Not to say that everyone moves there full time. You can just go and do a little stint and then come back. So it's just a great way for everyone to experience a completely different, like living culture, working culture, meeting new people. And what you realize is everyone at Koto is kind of exactly the same. We've got the exact same mentality. You can have a beer with every single person, then it's just going to feel like you're chatting to a mate. So it's yeah, something really really special.
That's really cool. Also, to have a shared culture, right? Because
Mm.
in my experience, of course, they have done studios in New York or somewhere in Asia, but they don't really have anything to do with each other. They just do their own thing. So that's really nice to hear that
Yeah,
you offer this thing.
It's
yeah.
actually one of the questions that we wanted to actually ask is a bit like about that a little bit further on, but maybe we just talk about it now as well. It's like, how do you kind of cultivate that kind of culture? I mean, you said Slack and then going backwards and forwards and stuff. I suppose that's part of it, but how do you maintain like a blueprint? Because I know culture is very, very important and to Koto, and obviously you can see that in the way that you speak about it as well. How do you make sure, like, in UK and in Australia, the same buzz, the same kind of energies going on.
That's it. I think it all comes down to hiring the right people, right? Like it's a company built by people. And we're just really, really careful when we hire people. We always want the person first and foremost to be part of the team and fit in really, really well. So finding the right people, ensuring that they're gonna be like a great fit, is such a big thing that we always kind of try to do. Also, we have global shares weekly where we'll be sharing work, and that will be with every single studio across the world. So we always know exactly kind of, firstly, what the work everyone's creating looks like. And secondly, it's an opportunity for everyone to just put a face to a name on a Zoom call, and everyone just gets to know each other. We chat at the start, and you kind of, yeah, it's mainly about that, getting to know everyone over Zoom. And then not on Zoom, we always try and do like summer parties, which are absolutely awesome. And I think that's probably for me the kind of main driver and how everyone gets to be part of the same culture and sort of have the exact kind of shared mentality. So last year we went to Croatia and it was absolutely brilliant. Everyone can meet everyone. You're having a beer, you're chatting, and you just get to, when you meet someone in real life, it then changes that kind of relationship immediately, and then you can go onto Slack and you can just chat with them like really openly and normally. I think that's such a huge thing, having the sort of face-to-face contacts and meets.
Awesome. So culture, people play a huge role at Koto. But we also asked ourselves, like, what else is there? Because there are studios who do great work, right? Like a lot. But again, like Koto is really like one of a few that were just became very successful the last 10 years, I would say. So is there what else is there, like because they're also not just creatively excellence, also in terms of, I mean, the clients and on a business side of things, just super successful, right? What do you think is the secret sauce there?
I think the secret sauce, I think, yeah, as you said, it stems down to absolutely every part of the business. You know, we've got an absolutely brilliant client servicing team who are like hot on it, having the client relations, keeping all of that really, really running smoothly. So they're the kind of like backbone of the business at all times, which ensures that, you know, we're getting really exciting clients, we're keeping really good relationships with them, and everything's running smoothly. Because if it doesn't run smoothly, then you can make brilliant work, but if it's not kind of delivered in a sort of very well mannered way, it kind of all falls down. So I'd say they're the kind of backbone of the company. And then second to that, it's always, as I said, hiring interesting people. You know, not only hiring designers that come from the sort of designer blueprint. You know, we're looking at people that are maybe like a hybrid role, and they look at motion and design, so they're not just kind of like stuck in one lane. They have multi kind of skills to themselves, which I think is just such an exciting thing. You know, the work that we're seeing in the first creative shares has really kind of changed into this new kind of dimension of kind of creativity. You know, people will like to play around with a little bit of code, and you know that makes such a big difference, and it just transforms previously sort of design that's very much built in a systematic way can now just be affected by code or AI, and then it's taken into a place that you wouldn't necessarily create on your own when you're just kind of on the tools in Figma and you're limited by those specific tools that are there on your keyboard. So I think, yeah, those are the kind of key things. It's all about just growing the team, ensuring that we have all these new skill sets coming in. Also, getting in people straight out of uni, I think, is such a big thing. We've also just recently had an intern that was actually just in their second year of university. So we're looking to kind of, you know, branch out and get people in really, really early, as soon as possible, just so that they can firstly experience it for themselves and see what a kind of really cool studio is like to work at, but also get their really fresh ideas. You know, it all kind of stems from that.
Yeah, I mean, there's tons of really great points here as well. One of the things that you talked about before was like the collective of people, and I think, you know, we experience that as well. You can make really great work, but if you don't build great relationships, it's never going to see the light of day. If you can't, like, it's not about convincing someone, it's about kind of nurturing and making people feel safe that the journey that you're on with them is the right one. And I think that's super important to have all those different kind of people making that work together.
Yeah, and I think the relationships thing is such a big thing, not only with the team at Koto, but with our clients. And you know, we've worked with clients on kind of repeat basis. You know, we've got some that we've worked with for years, some that we work with for a really kind of short period of time, but then they always kind of come back, and you know, they're doing like, oh, we're doing an out of home campaign. Can you make this with us, because we love working with you. So I think, yeah, relationships both with the team at Koto and also with the clients.
And also, just that you touched on the fact that you're also working with students as well. I think this is so important. I think there's too much gatekeeping that goes on in our industry. I mean, I think we've spoken about this before as well. And actually breaking down those barriers and opening up those doors and letting people in, it's more important than it ever has been. It's always been important, but right now, I mean, you see that there's a lot of agencies not even taking junior roles on. And, you know, making our industry, it's not that it's never been sexy, but it's a very confusing place at the moment. But making it interesting again, because like, what is a designer these days? I mean, we ask ourselves the same questions. You know, the roles change. You know, there's many different ways of being able to do things, and I think bringing younger people in, it's not even younger, just like opening the doors and like helping to educate and showing them that there's a safe space and place for them. I think it's super important.
100%, and I think there's kind of loads of answers to this that I've been thinking about as you've just said that. But one of the kind of main things for me that I really wanted to ensure that I was doing, when I grew up or when I kind of got a role was I remember sending out so many emails to so many places and getting absolutely no response. And I found it so kind of soul destroying at the
Yeah,
time.
it's heartbreaking, huh?
You're at uni and you're like, oh, it's going to be amazing. I'm going to get a job immediately. And then you send all these emails and you're like, oh, no one's replied.
Mm-hmm.
So I've always made a point of whoever it is, if I get an email through, I'll always reply no matter what. If I get a message on LinkedIn, I always reply. I've had loads of people messaging me recently just asking for, a bit of feedback on their Figma presentations or their portfolio. And I always try and give a bit of my time, even if it's just 20 minutes on the train home, just to kind of nurture, and give sort of back to the students, because I think it's really, really valuable. Um,
That's
that's,
another
that's
part of the job description, right? That you
exactly,
probably didn't sign up for, but it's like
exactly,
it's very rewarding as well. It's like you play counselor a little bit.
yeah,
That kind of safety net for other people, which is again is
exactly.
really important.
Yeah, no, I think it's such an important thing, just for me as well. Like, you feel like you're giving back. It might just be as simple as, someone sent you for a link and then it's like doesn't work, or the page number's wrong or something like that. And I think even the smallest kind of helping hands along the way is kind of really important. Um, Another thing that we do at Koto is, we always get the students in. We get students from all over the world coming to visit our studio. We normally do like portfolio reviews. We do kind of presentations showing them not just our portfolio of work, but the kind of ways in which we do work and how we might approach jobs. Because I think that's one thing as well that you don't necessarily or can't learn at uni, because every kind of working client is probably different. There is a bit of a formula to how we, structure a job, but it's just really important for a team to see like all of these different parts of it. A lot of people don't know that it always starts with strategy, and there needs to be
Mm.
like a strategical idea behind everything we do. And that phase of work actually takes the same amount of time as the design work itself. And I think that's something that I personally didn't even know or think about at university or when I was studying. So it's quite interesting to see, that people are studying design, but then they might actually, when it comes to it, prefer to be a strategist, because the skills are, they can be flipped around, and it's the same thought process that goes into both things. It's just one's going to be more strategical thinking, and one's going to be a bit more visual.
Nice.
Mm.
Yeah, true, man. So you're way on your journey. Are you still on your journey, right?
Yeah,
Um,
I hope so.
but you're obviously quite self-reflective as well, and you're also talking with people a little bit earlier on in their career as well. And this also leads me on to the question for you regarding like the old days. Like, is there anything that you miss? Like you're where you are today. How long you been with? You said seven,
Yeah,
7 years?
coming up to 7 years.
Coming up to 7 years. So you've seen this transformation. Is there any kind of like earlier moments, like where I know you rolled your sleeves up, like a little avant-garde style brief came in, you're like, okay, let's get crazy, let's get creative here, in comparison to maybe some of the bigger briefs that's going on today? Is there any kind of thing from back in the day that you kind of miss?
I mean, this is quite a random answer, but one of the things I do miss is printing out the work and putting it on the wall. It's something that it was in the first studios I worked in, and then Koto. We always used to go round together and print it out on an A4 printer and just review the work together. I think that's something that I'm still trying to kind of cling on to. Sketching out along the way, printing out logos when we get to a certain part of the job to ensure that it actually looks good. But I think that's something that I do kind of have a little. There's a little piece of my heart that goes back to the sort of tactility of printing out work. But yeah, I think it kind of, there are obviously, we were working on slightly smaller jobs back in the day, which were, like you said, a bit more scrappy. The stakes were a bit less. You're not working with the kind of big companies that you are now, where there might be slightly more limitations. The clients might come to us and the work might have been, I think, just a bit more scrappy, and the stakes, I think, were a bit lower. But having said that, when I did join, one of the first jobs that I was working on was a brief for Coca-Cola. So
Right.
there's
Okay.
sort of a yes and no answer to that, because the stakes were still quite high when I joined, and the clients were still quite big, amazingly, for such a small company at the time.
Nice. It's funny actually what you said about the printing out, because that's actually something I miss and something that we talked about.
Mm.
Actually, Simon as well, Simon Dixon,
Pova
and
actually
was it
posted.
Apova?
Yeah.
From Dixon Baxter. They've also, I know they're big advocates. When we were at the studio, they had all their stuff printed out, and they're having
Mm.
sessions where they were walking around and stuff. And
Yeah,
they were again advocating that and saying that's something that they really push in their culture
yeah.
to do that. And yeah, that also took me back as well. And I wish we could kind of do that, but we always run out of ink.
We don't even have a
We don't.
printer.
Well, we had it like this little inkjet, and it would just be going all day long. It would be terribly annoying. You'd have
But
to
we
get like a
draw. We
really
still
high-end
draw.
printer to do it.
Yeah. And we
Yeah.
still draw things, you know, in our sketchbooks.
Yeah, for sure.
100%. There's some things that I definitely do not miss, though. I think when I reflect back on it now, the sort of technology we have now is absolutely incredible. Like the rate at which Figma is growing is insane. How you can all be working on a Figma file, no matter where you are, no matter how big it is. And I always remember working on Illustrator files, and someone's
Oh,
like
mate.
going on holiday and they pass you over their files, and you open it up and you get the big red corrupt button. All the images are unlinked and it needs to be delivered at the end of the day, and you like have to spend 5 hours relinking manually all these images. And there's
Oh,
definitely things that I miss.
you see someone at the coffee machine with their heads in their hand. You're like, "What's up, mate?" It's like, "Photoshop just crashed. I lost everything." It's like, "It's going to be all right. Can you remember what you did?" You
Yeah.
know, those things don't
Retrace your
happen.
steps.
Yeah.
Yeah, insane.
Nice. All right. So I assume you worked probably on like hundreds of projects also at Koto so far. Is there any project that like stands out for you that you are like very proud of, and that, you know, where you really grew as a person and as a designer as well?
Yeah, I'd say so. I'd say there's probably two that stick out most for me. The first one is Deezer, the rebrand for Deezer, which for me, when it came in, was like an absolute dream job, because you're working in the music industry. You're going to be working with lots of really cool kind of art direction and artists, and kind of have creative freedom on that kind of spectrum. But yeah, that one for me was absolutely brilliant, because it was also one of the sort of first jobs where we had quite a lot of travel baked in, because they're based in Paris, and we were just going over there all the time, and it was a total rebrand. We pitched for it, we won the job, and then we were going back and forth, working really, really kind of collaboratively with the team, because they've got such a big design team themselves internally. It's probably about 30 or 40 people their side.
Okay.
So that for me was just brilliant. And you're not just working in silo in London and then showing them the work. We were working with them in the room, having Zoom calls all the time, getting to experience Paris, eating brilliant food, going out with the team, and just making something really, really special, but also something that was very functional as well for them to actually be able to use. It's all very well and good designing amazing stuff, but you need to ensure that their teams can actually recreate or use the assets that you're making.
It's a challenge, right? That's the big challenge.
It's the big challenge,
Sure.
yeah, it is. Because you want to ensure that when it actually comes out, what you've made in the brand guidelines and stuff actually is reflective of their new product. So that was absolutely brilliant. And once we'd delivered the guidelines themselves, and the job's sort of done, we went back over there once or twice to run like in-person workshops with them, just to sort of stress test the system. Because it kind of like, when you deliver, you almost feel like that's the end of the job. But with
It's
Deezer,
the beginning, right? I mean, that's the thing we always say. That's the beginning. That's the life of the brand. It's
exactly.
grown up and it goes off into the world.
Exactly. And it was just such a great time, because we were like, look, can everyone come with something new that they've made from the brand, that is a slightly different approach to what we've created already, to ensure that it has enough kind of diversity and flex over the course of the next sort of few years. And we were testing stuff out in the room with them. We were working with them. A little team of us went over, and it was just so brilliant. Kind of just, again, all about culture, not only us internally, but working with another team and just making mates there and having a good time and just making really kind of cool work. So I think that's the kind of first one for me that I'm really proud of, because I think you can see the idea really clearly. It's just a really nice story, and for me it was like a really nice journey from sort of start to finish.
It makes you really proud, right? I mean,
Yeah,
when you put that thing out into the world and somebody comes back and they have their own interpretation of it, and that's what we should be building is brands that are flexible and they have that space to breathe and that are ownable for whoever's going to be working with it. There should not be rigid
yeah,
design systems and structures.
yeah.
I mean, there should be solid foundations to build upon, but you should feel like you can own this and work with it.
That's 100% it. And I think it kind of leads on to a point that we're currently in a sort of transitional period with. Kind of gone are the days of delivering a 300-page guideline that's really rigid and really kind of
Yeah.
limiting, I'd say. And I think we're moving into a space now where most of our clients, and we're pushing them towards more of like a style guide, which is about 40 to 50 pages. It has the, like you said, the core kind of foundations, the typeface, the color, the kind of graphic system, but it leaves everything else up for kind of grabs as they grow as a company, and it doesn't kind of limit the job, which I think is really kind of an exciting place, especially for teams that are working on this, in house, and they want to have, like you said, their own creative interpretation of it and make the work that they're creating actually feel like their work, instead of, oh, I'm just recreating something, I'm changing the color, and then that's kind of where it ends.
Yeah. All right. Then let's talk Amazon. I mean, it's
The big boy,
we are
the mammoth.
we are
we
still
can say
planning
that.
to do a brand review about it.
Mm.
We did like a little take on it, but you have the longest case
Ever.
known to man. It's such a scroll, I'm telling you. It's beautiful, don't get me wrong, but it's such a scroll. So there's quite a lot to dive into when we do actually do the brand review.
Yeah, no, 100%. It's an absolutely, as I said earlier, mammoth job that lasted multiple years, and it was sort of a long time in the making as well. Um, and it's basically the biggest company in the world, really, or one of. And yeah, such a big job that spans from the tiniest little interactions all the way through to the largest kind of billboards and out of homes, and it's sort of full spectrum in terms of size and scale, all the way down to the tiny details and digital interactions.
Yeah. I also there's something James said in an interview, that he wanted Koto to be like a small studio approach, but sitting on the big tables with
Mm,
where the big projects are happening. I think that happened. I mean, this is
Hmm.
probably the biggest what you can do, right? And also like a great job, I think, to be honest. The question is what's next? I mean, what can come after that?
I mean, in terms of size, I'm not 100% too sure. I think the just the exciting thing for me is that we can work with the Amazons of the world today, but we can also work with the small players at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and that just keeps everything, super exciting for every single person of the team. They can work on a big job one week, but then the next week they might be designing, a small little startup or something really kind of like nice and sort of smaller scale and lower stakes. So I think having the breadth of work is just really important, again, for the team to grow, because you learn different skills across all the different jobs that you're doing. You're going to pick up how to work for a big mammoth corporation, all the kind of tricks and skills, and being a bit more sort of strict with yourself and the rules and regulations, and is this actually going to work at all of these kind of small moments. But when you're working with a small company, there's not all those limitations, which you can be a kind of bit more expressive with, and I think it's just great for everyone to touch both jobs at the same time, to ensure that they're growing all their skills and learning on both parts of, and both kind of parts of the job.
Yeah. I mean, humanity's got this big, bold ambition of heading out into space to Mars. Maybe there's a place on the ship for Koto as well.
Maybe. I mean, I wouldn't mind going to Mars. It would be quite cool.
A little longer than a New York trip, right? But
Yeah, I'm not sure how long it takes to get to Mars, but
it'd be a nice little perk at the bottom of the application, right?
yeah, exactly.
All right, cool. I think that's pretty much everything, right? Man, it's gone so quick.
Awesome.
I could sit here and talk to you for hours. Thank you so much
No AI question today.
No, I didn't want any of that. We wanted real conversation about real experiences, man. So
Awesome.
thank
Well,
you so much for taking the time. We waited a while to do this, and I'm really happy we got to do it. Full of insights and inspiration, and hopefully aspirational for many different people as well. From younger creators coming through, right to people who are trying to figure out things in their career as well at the moment. So thank you for being so honest and sharing your journey with us.
Awesome.
And
Thank you so
congrats
much.
to you guys and at Koto. I mean, you're doing incredible work. Also, like this Amazon thing, I hope that sends a signal that, you know, also, let's say, more studios with a small
Yeah.
studio approach, you know, can get onto these kind of
Definitely.
projects.
It inspires us.
Yeah.
You know, seeing your journey and where we're going and what we've been doing as well, it really kind of, it's a really kind of great North Star to see, that kind of, let's say, rags to riches kind of, you know, but staying like grounded. I think that's one of the most important things, and that's one of the biggest takeaways that I can take from this talk. I won't call it an interview. This talk with you and this chat is that you keep your head exactly where it is, and I think that's a great place to be.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me on. It was, as I said, great to chat to you. It's nice to reflect as well on the sort of journey. It's very nice. So thank you.
Cool. All right. That just about wraps it up for this episode of the Brand Review. Thank you so much for joining us, and as always, share this with people who love brand, Koto, and all the stuff that we've talked about. And subscribe. Yeah, that helps. Yeah. And as always, we will see you in the next one. Cheers. Peace.